ask Sister Jeannie Hagedorn to begin to share with us her experience as bishop.
First, I'd like to share with you a picture that I have of Bishop Dingman from 1981, and this is very, very special to me. One of the benefits of, after 20 years going through my files, was I ran across a paper that I had written about my memories of Bishop Dingman. And so I decided to just take some excerpts from that, but I'd like to kind of summarize them in 6 qualities that, for me, stand out about Bishop Dingman and his life. I think, first of all, his greatest legacy to the Diocese of Des Moines was his recognition of both the gifts and the needs of people. He had an ability to free the gifts in people and to address the needs as he saw them. And that means all people. He was an advocate for, as Father Dave said, for farmers, for women, for prisoners, for children, for the homeless, for conscientious objectors, for refugees. It was his spirit of trust and compassion and loyalty, his integrity, his faith, and his love that challenged us both as individuals and as a community. One of the first qualities that stands out for me about Bishop Dingman was his integrity. While he had a deep love and loyalty for the church as an institution, he likewise had a deep love and reverence for the church as people of God. And that sometimes was both his agony and his ecstasy. When he felt the Spirit at work in God's people, no matter who it was, he was excited and visibly moved. But when the experience of his people came in conflict with authority, the gentle pastor suffered a real agony, torn between his loyalty between authority and his people, whether that's government authority or church authority. I witnessed this firsthand in the 70s. I worked as the coordinator of religious education for the Diocese of Des Moines, and I worked very closely with him when a directive came from Rome that we had to end an experimentation that we were going through in regard to religious ed. I was deeply disturbed by the retrenchment as I saw it, and so was he. It seemed like the experience of the people of our diocese was not being taken into consideration, and that we were asked to go back in our view. And so we sat there in the office and we struggled with that. How could he respond to this? And he said to me, I don't know what to do. He said, I have to be faithful to Rome, and yet I have to be faithful to the Spirit of God working in our people, because he could see the good that was being done. Well, thankfully we were able to resolve that, but it gave me a glimpse into the agony, the pain that he went through when he saw a conflict between 2 good points of view that he had to make a decision about, and I'm sure that was true in many situations. So his integrity. Secondly, his simplicity. Those of you who knew him knew that he never considered himself too important or too busy to go to God's little ones. That might be the little 2nd graders in my classroom when we invited him to come visit us to see their Christmas play. It might be the people at Catholic Worker House, prisoners, the refugees. Nobody was unimportant to him. He'd come and celebrate a birthday in our home. He even liked the weed coffee that I made. But Bishop Dingman, he led by his example. As you know, he sold his big bishop's mansion so that he could live life more simply. He taught more by who he was and what he did than even more than what he said. He'd be out there after a meeting, he'd be out there in the kitchen helping us do dishes. Simplicity. Third quality was his compassion and his sensitivity. This was evidenced again for me personally and for my family in 1979 when our father was dying of cancer. Word somehow reached the bishop at his office, and typical of him, he left whatever he was doing to come down to the hospital to be with our family. His presence as a friend said more than words could ever express. And it was gestures like that and his handwritten notes of appreciation and friendship that spoke volumes of his love for people. Fourth quality that I admired was his advocacy. And we've mentioned before some of the people and the groups that he was advocate for. And these gentlemen on either side of me will talk more about the farmers. But we as women felt that we had in Bishop Dingman a real advocate, someone who tried to understand our struggles in the church, and someone who was willing to take a stand to support us, both nationally and locally. We gathered a small group of women in our living room one year, and he came over and just sat and listened to us about what were our hopes, what were our struggles, what did we see needed to be done to free women in society and in the church. He recognized the sin of sexism, and he worked to liberate our church of its evil. He acknowledged the gifts and the needs of both men and women. And his public stance for justice in every arena was a source of challenge, but also of encouragement and support. And he was not afraid to be criticized for his beliefs. A fifth quality that I admired was his patience. Anyone who knew Bishop Dingman knew that his favorite phrase was constant and patient dialogue. And that became a cause both of laughter because it was predictable. No matter where he was, what meeting he was gathering, that would come up. Constant and patient dialogue. Sometimes it was a cause of impatience for some of us who wanted it to be made. But that was those words probably mark better than any his style of leadership. He was a communicator, and he really wanted to listen to the spirit in each person. And finally, Bishop Dingman had a terrific sense of humor. One spring we had priests and sisters theology workshop out at Colfax, and we had wonderful input from the presenters, and we shared prayer, we shared meals, we played basketball, and as luck would have it, I sprained my ankle. And so those around said, "Oh, you're going to be in trouble when you go back to your classroom. Bishop, you ought to write her an excuse. She's going to try to get another day of rest out of this." And so he says, "I think I will." So I took off my name tag and I saved this because it was special. And he wrote, "Sister Marion," who was the principal, "there is no sprain. It is wholly and completely psychological." with his official signature. Bishop of Des Moines. He was our friend as well as our bishop. He was our brother who walked with us. And I think he explained it in words that mean more than any I could say. He said, I can think of no better ministry than to be where there is life and death, struggles and dreams, the search for meaning, crowds of people and children, celebrations, and sometimes weeping.